Caleb wearily scanned the room. It had been 5 years since Freya passed away. In that time he had managed to cope with daily life, but he knew well that without a woman's touch, the apartment felt somewhat barren. His late wife had always bought little things, pillows, vases, candle holders, seemingly insignificant items that nonetheless gave the rooms a cozy, warm feel. He couldn't do that himself. Caleb even hired a designer the last time he renovated the apartment. A quirky girl named Tessa did a good job. She suggested a Scandinavian-style design project. Caleb thought it was a great choice. Light tones, strict geometric shapes, a perfect backdrop for any experiments. But that was as far as it went. The bright details Tessa picked out somehow irritated him, seemed cliched. And even though she was a professional, Freya had done it better. The glass fireplace in the living room didn't help either. Caleb didn't dwell on it too much. He didn't really need all that coziness if he lived alone. But he didn't live alone. He had a 6-year-old son, Dorian. The boy didn't remember his mother. She died when he was just a year old. Despite this, he often looked at photos and videos from the time when Freya was alive. Caleb understood that his son, despite his show of independence, craved maternal love. A father's love alone wasn't enough. Kevin, Caleb's own father, a stern man who always wore a suit and glasses, insisted that he urgently needed to find a woman before it was too late. "Do you want Dorian to grow up emotionally cold and stingy? No matter how much you love him, you can't give him what a woman can." "But you raised me alone. Mom left us when I was as old as Dorian is now." "That's different," his father argued. "I'm not going to judge your mother. I can't even call her that. But still, thanks to her, you came into this world. I won't judge, but while she was around, she gave you some love. Dorian never had a mother. Or rather, he did, but in such an unconscious age that he doesn't remember. He claims he remembers. He's created an image in his head. You said it yourself. He often looks at her photos, watches videos where she's holding him. Children's imagination is extremely developed, don't forget. So I can't raise him to be a real person on my own. You did. Why not? But he'll be one-sided. Yes, you understood correctly. Look at yourself. You often lack basic softness. I understand. You lost your wife, were left alone with a small child. Who wouldn't be tough? But Freya knew how to keep you in check, and Dorian will grow up the same if you don't take action soon. In raising a child, both parents should be involved to pass on their best traits. No matter how good you are, you won't succeed alone. A basic personality forms by age 5. At that age, you had a mother, so you managed to form that phase. But it's too late for Dorian. He's starting school next year. Even if I find a woman now, she won't replace a mother. Son, understand, anything can be fixed. The main thing is to start on time. Dorian lacks female attention. Before he turned 1, he received some maternal love, and his subconscious already has the image of a loving woman. Besides, he's about to enter adolescence. And then you'll really feel that you didn't give him everything he needed and blame yourself for everything. All right, Caleb sighed heavily. What do you suggest I do? Just find him a mother? Marry the first woman I meet? Absolutely not, Kevin shook his head. You must love this woman, and she must love you. Children sense everything. Just any woman won't do. If this woman loves you, she'll love Dorian too. An artificial marriage won't work. But where do I find such a woman? Do you think it's easy to fall in love? And mutually at that? Of course it's not easy, but for example, you have Jane. Jane? That's different. I don't love her. Yes, there's an attraction. We've been seeing each other on and off for a while, but I don't see her as a wife. I'm just used to it, and she definitely doesn't need all this. How do you know? Every woman dreams of a family. Tell me, why haven't you even introduced her to your son? You two have been sneaking around like teenagers for a couple of years. It's even funny. Jane and I are just physical, no feelings. I know how she looks at children. She might love her own, but accepting someone else's? Unlikely. And Dorian? I doubt he'd get used to her. You're a fool, Caleb, a real fool. All right, what can I do? It's your life. I have no right to interfere. You're not a child anymore, but if I were you, I'd listen to my father's advice. It was time to pick up Dorian from daycare. Caleb didn't particularly like the place. He even considered hiring a nanny to take on some of his responsibilities, but it seemed somehow degrading. Caleb sincerely believed that having a nanny would spoil the child. At the daycare, the gazes of single moms and young teachers were all on him. They all knew he was a widower struggling to raise his son. Most importantly, he was well off. Few of these women would refuse such a catch. But none of them realized that Caleb didn't need it at all. Even the last time, when one of the teachers was persistently, even desperately flirting with him. The young mom was pretty. In the old days, Caleb might have responded to her advances, but now he saw the true motives behind such behavior. A single woman with a small child was just looking for another wallet to relieve her of worries and troubles. And it happened daily, which made him melancholy when parking near the daycare. Caleb entered the building. Today he arrived a little later, deliberately, to avoid unwanted encounters with the moms. Dorian was used to his father's delays. Usually the boy patiently waited for Caleb, sitting in the corner with coloured pencils and a sketchbook. But today was different. Caleb found his son extremely agitated. Hastily dressed, dishevelled, the teacher was unsuccessfully trying to calm the child. Seeing his father, Dorian rushed to him. "Dad, let's go quickly." "We can still catch them." "Who?" Caleb was taken aback. "Why are you so excited?" "Mum," Dorian replied, sniffling. "I saw her today. She came for Anastasia. Usually her grandma picks her up, but today her mum did." "Wait a minute." Caleb was confused. "Why do we need to catch Anastasia and her mom?" "Not her." Dorian was nearly in tears. "Our mom." Caleb felt a chill inside. "Dorian, you're mistaken." He tried to calm his son. "You know your mom is in heaven. She couldn't have come here." "It was her." The child's tone was serious. Those words made Caleb uneasy. "I recognized her. I wouldn't mistake it. It was Mom." "All right, wait. When did you see her?" "They left just before you came in." Dorian's gaze was fixed on the exit. "Dad, I'm not lying." "Listen, son, I don't think you're lying. But when I came in, the yard was empty. In any case, Anastasia and her mum are already gone. We can't catch them now, but if you really want, I'll ask where they live and we can visit them. Okay?" "Yes." The boy nodded. Caleb approached the teacher who had been watching his conversation with his son. The young woman stood a bit aside, smiling awkwardly. The teacher was one of those who had tried to catch his attention more than once. "Hello, Caitlin Ashford," he greeted her. "I don't think I need to explain anything. Can you help us? I don't want Dorian to be upset, so I just have to prove to him that there was a mistake. Could you give us Anastasia's address?" The woman replied, somewhat frightened. "I'm sorry, but I can't. In today's climate, disclosing personal information is strictly punished. You can ask the director, but she'll probably refuse too." "I see." Caleb sighed. "All right. At least tell me Anastasia's last name. I can't let the boy down." "Alderidge." "I don't remember such a girl." Caleb frowned. "She's only been in the group for a month. Her grandma usually brings and takes her, but her mum sometimes comes." "And what's the mum's name?" "Julia." "That's what I thought," Caleb muttered. Naturally, Dorian was mistaken. He saw a similar-looking woman and mistook her for his own mother, hence the result. But how to convince him otherwise? The man nervously looked after the stranger, realizing the absurdity of what was happening. Caleb approached his son and patted his head. "You know what, Dorian? They won't tell me where Anastasia lives. But to convince you that her mom isn't yours, let's do this. We'll go home now, and tomorrow I'll come early, and we'll wait for that woman together to make sure." "Okay." "All right." The boy thought for a moment, then nodded, but he added, "Dad, I didn't make a mistake. It was Mom." As promised, The next day, Caleb arrived at the daycare early. There was no certainty that today Anastasia's mom would come instead of her grandma, but he had promised his son, so he couldn't break his word. Dorian was already waiting for his father when he entered the changing room. "Well?" Caleb asked. "No," the boy shook his head. "Shall we go for a walk in the yard? The weather's nice, and we can see everyone coming in." "Agreed!" Dorian obediently jumped off the bench and went outside with his father. The weather was indeed beautiful. Settling on a bench by the entrance, Caleb began to wait. Dorian refused to go to the playground. He played nearby, glancing around. Parents came for their children, but Caleb didn't see any woman resembling his late wife. He was about to give up and take his son home, especially since the boy was distracted and fully engrossed in the colourful slide. Caleb stood up from the bench and was about to call his son when a woman entered through the gate. A light beige coat, a petite figure, dark blonde hair cascading over her shoulders, arched eyebrows. There was no doubt. Caleb felt as if he had gone mad. Sensing his gaze, the woman stopped and looked back intently. Caleb realized he was standing with his mouth open and probably seemed like a lunatic to this woman. "Excuse me." The woman spoke, and her voice struck Caleb's ears. For 5 years he hadn't heard that painfully familiar hoarseness. "Can I help you?" "No." Caleb exhaled. "Just tell me. Are you Anastasia Aldridge's mother, Julia, if I'm not mistaken?" "Yes," the woman was quite surprised. "Do we know each other?" "Yes. No," Caleb stammered. "What am I doing?" "Forgive me, I'm Dorian Whittaker's dad. He's in the same group as Anastasia. My name is Caleb." "And?" "It's just, I don't even know how to say." "Just say it as it is." Julia's tone was irritated. "And preferably quickly. I need to pick up my daughter. I'm already late." "Tell me, how long have you been coming to this daycare?" "Not long, about a month. We recently moved from another city." "And why are you asking?" "Oh, just organizational questions." Caleb suddenly realized how foolish it was to talk about his deceased wife. Obviously, this woman wasn't her. Despite the phenomenal resemblance, there were differences. An outsider might not notice them. "Sorry, this can wait. Some parents complain about the conditions, so I was just asking." "Oh, I see." Julia relaxed. "No, we're fine with everything. It's a good daycare, and the teachers are caring. I think it's just rumors." "Sorry again, I won't keep you any longer." The woman smiled and quickly headed towards the building. Caleb prayed that Dorian hadn't witnessed this encounter. Then he'd have to explain. But the boy seemed to have forgotten everything. He was still sliding down the slide. When Julia left, Caleb quickly approached his son. "Dorian, we need to go. Anastasia's already been picked up by her grandma. I just saw them. Maybe next time." "Really?" the boy asked doubtfully. "Why didn't you call me?" "You were playing so intently, and I got a call," Caleb replied evasively. He was eager to get his son off the playground as soon as possible to avoid him running into Anastasia and her mom leaving the daycare. With shaky hands, the man started the car and quickly left the parking lot. Dorian seemed quite upset, so his father suggested stopping for ice cream, to which the boy readily agreed. In the evening, after putting his son to bed, Caleb was left alone with his thoughts. He couldn't shake off the memory of this woman. Julia. How can people be so similar, he thought. She doesn't just remind me of Freya, she's her exact replica. Even the intonations in her voice are identical. Could Freya have had a twin sister? They might have been separated at birth. These things happen. Maybe I should call Lillian. Lillian was Freya's mother. Her daughter's death had hit her hard. Though not old, she suddenly seemed to age, becoming frail and withdrawn. A year before Freya's death, Lillian had lost her husband in an accident. The woman closed herself off, avoiding contact with others. If I call her now, even with such questions. He hadn't seen Lillian for about a year. She hadn't even visited to see her grandson. Any mention of her daughter could provoke an unpredictable reaction. Caleb didn't want to risk it. He needed to find out everything himself first, then try to extract any information from his late wife's mother. That could be done later. But if there was something... When the issue of a bone marrow donor arose, Freya was dying slowly. The only thing that could save her was a transplant. But alas, there was no suitable donor among her relatives. If Lillian had known about the existence of a twin, she would have done everything possible to save her daughter. But she didn't have that information. But if not a twin, then what? Could it have been Freya herself? Caleb had been with his wife until her last breath. When she was diagnosed with the terrible disease, leukemia, the light went out for him. Freya held up well. She joked while holding the newborn Dorian in her arms. She said that medicine was advancing and it was not a death sentence, but it turned out quite differently. A long course of treatment, chemotherapy, then another, and another. In less than 8 months, Freya was a shadow of her former self. She fought for her life until the end. Now, recalling his wife's emaciated body, her sunken cheeks, and dark circles under her eyes, Caleb understood perfectly well. No matter how fantastic or desirable the thought of her miraculous salvation seemed, it was not true. The man clearly remembered kissing her cold forehead for the last time. By then, she was no longer Freya, but some tormented wax figure, a pathetic semblance of the cheerful Freya she once was. And then there was the crematorium. Caleb didn't want to remember anymore. He pushed away the heavy thoughts and took a sleeping pill. Without the pills, he probably wouldn't have slept. The following days, Caleb tried to pick up Dorian later to avoid running into Julia near the daycare, but his fears were unfounded. Anastasia's grandma came for her, and Dorian seemed to have already forgotten about that encounter. He even stopped looking at photos of his mother at home. Caleb himself tried to forget about Julia's existence as soon as possible. On the weekend, he sent his son to his grandfather, deciding to spend his free time with Jane. He had been seeing this girl for a couple of years, but their relationship hadn't developed into anything more. Yes, Jane liked Caleb, but her views on life were at odds with his own. He wasn't planning to propose to her, and Jane herself didn't insist. She was quite satisfied with these meetings a few times a month, expensive gifts, restaurant outings, and no obligations. Jane was nothing like Freya. She was 7 years younger than Caleb, finishing her graduate studies, and was interested in things incomprehensible to him. Esotericism. It always seemed like nonsense to Caleb. All this paraphernalia and astrology books either bored him or left him in a stupor. Jane, explain to me. He would ask her when she held an online session with one of her clients. You're an educated person, almost a PhD. Do you really believe in all this nonsense? Caleb, you're so funny, Jane would smile. It's just business. Think about it. What can I expect after defending my dissertation? A job in a modest research institute and a meagre salary? But I can't give up science, it's my calling. And esotericism. You can make really good money from it now. You have no idea how many women and even men are willing to pay for card readings. But it's pure deception. Aren't you ashamed to trick people? Why do you think I'm tricking them? Jane raised an eyebrow. Our thoughts are material. If something isn't proven, it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. The time just hasn't come yet. I've been drawn to the unknown since childhood. As the daughter of scientists, I should have denied it. But it's not that simple. All right, how do you think these cards work? Well, look. Jane laid out a colourful deck in front of Caleb. Each picture is a set of symbols. Let's say you have a question. You formulate it. I shuffle the deck, draw cards, and find the answer to your question. Each card has its own meaning. In essence, I'm just a conduit, sending your request to this infosphere. And can they answer any question? Almost. I can't predict your future. If someone claims otherwise, they're lying. I just show you the most likely development of events, and then it's up to you. You get a general forecast and recommendations, what to do to achieve the desired result. If you do nothing, then As they say, a rolling stone gathers no moss, but if you do everything as the tarot asks, you'll get what you want. That's the gist of it, yes. Jane nodded. Caleb smirked. All you need is a crystal ball. That's complete nonsense, the girl snorted. I don't believe in magic. But, for example, take astrology. It's considered a pseudoscience now, but it's actually based on mathematics. It's pure calculations. Of course, they're all averaged and everyone paints their own picture, but people need something to believe in, to give them direction. My job is like a psychologist's, only my tools aren't quite conventional. And actually, the use of metaphorical and associative cards is recognized by leading psychotherapists. It's like a program for working with the subconscious. You know how to solve your problems, but the answers aren't always on the surface. So I dig into other people's souls, and they like it, and they're willing to pay. What's wrong with that? And do you make a lot of money from it, I wonder? No, don't get me wrong, I'm not asking out of greed, Caleb hastened to say, just for general understanding. Well, a decent amount, Jane replied. I'm saving for an apartment. I'm tired of renting. I definitely won't return to my parents' hovel. With my salary, even under the best circumstances, I can't afford anything, and I want to not deny myself anything. I've already saved up a lot. Another year of work, and I'll buy it. Wow, Caleb whistled. Fortune-telling isn't cheap, I see. That's what I'm saying, it's just business. I even completed several courses to get certificates. So I'm officially doing this. A hobby. A lucrative one. Caleb still couldn't tell if she was serious or not. When he visited her again and saw her doing a spread, an unexpected thought crossed his mind. Jane, listen. You'll think I'm crazy, but I want you to read the cards for me. You don't believe in any of this? The girl squinted in surprise. I can't imagine what must have happened for you to change your mind. Here's the thing, Caleb hesitated. I don't even know if your tarot can answer this. Anyway, a few days ago I met a woman. Wait, stop, Jane frowned. I think it's at least rude to ask your girlfriend to read cards about some random woman. No, Jane, don't get worked up. It's not that kind of situation. Caleb kissed her frowning forehead. All right, go on. I was picking up Dorian from daycare, and I saw my wife. What do you mean? Well, of course it couldn't be my wife. You know she died 5 years ago from cancer. But you can't imagine how much that woman looks like her. It was like seeing a ghost. And didn't you ask her yourself? No, of course not. They'd just think I was crazy. Yeah, I understand. Jane pondered. She's just insanely similar. Yes. Her name is different, and I'm clearly not familiar with her. Her daughter is in the same group as Dorian. They recently moved. So, what do you want to find out? I've been racking my brain. What if Freya had a twin sister or something like that? I just can't forget about her existence. Even Dorian told me he saw his mom. I was just... You know, you should really talk to Freya's relatives, or with that woman. Though honestly, I don't understand what that conversation will give you. You can't bring your wife back anyway. I don't know. Caleb frowned. I'm just curious. Maybe your cards will tell me everything. I just want to calm down and not rack my brain. All right, but tarot only works if you believe in them. Or on the principle, why not? Let's try it. It would be nice if you could give me a photo of that woman. Or her full name. Where would I get a photo? I know her name. But you say she's a spitting image of Freya. We can try with her photo, though I think it won't work. We can do a specific spread for you now, and then you can try to photograph her. All right, let's try, Caleb agreed. He didn't really believe in getting any reasonable result anyway. Jane watched him for a long time as he formulated his question. Finally, he came up with, what will the meeting with this woman lead to? The girl laid 3 cards face down on the table and turned them over one by one. Oh. Jane's expression changed immediately. Not the best spread, of course, she grimaced. Look, here's the first card, the Magician. That's you. The Arcana speaks of the need to understand your inner world. You need to find a balance, a link between your imagination and the embodiment of ideas. Don't trust anyone. Rely only on your own strength. The magician can also mean a promising acquaintance, even infatuation. Really? Caleb laughed. But I'm not planning to pursue anyone. This card represents your new acquaintance. She can be characterized as an unpredictable person who can't control her emotions. And you know what else? Jane frowned. The reversed Queen of Cups predicts a completely different format of relationships, with a well-known woman. This lady can severely threaten your affairs and even your health. You should expect deceit from her, and the most vile kind, due to a past grievance. She will act secretly, using cunning tricks, involving others in her play. The scariest part is that you trust this woman completely and don't entertain any thoughts of betrayal from her. And how do I interpret that? Caleb narrowed his eyes. I can't explain it to you. You have to draw your own conclusions. According to the spread, this Julia is your wife. But that can't be. Of course it can't. All right, I get it. Your tarot is nonsense. Don't even say anything further. No, let me at least interpret the last card. All right, you didn't want it. You agreed yourself. Caleb was already tired of this fortune-telling. Look, this is the outcome and advice for the situation position. The Tower came up. A very unfavourable card, but it is what it is. It signifies the collapse of plans, losses, shock. Your familiar world will be destroyed. All you can do is accept the circumstances. You can't change anything. You'll have to start over. A breakup. Jane fell silent and quietly put the deck back in the box. Caleb waited for her to say something, but the girl's mood had soured. She just went to the kitchen to brew some coffee. When Caleb followed her, Jane stood by the window. Caleb, listen, she whispered. Don't get involved in this. You might find out something you won't like. Leave everything as it is. Actually, let's get married. What? Caleb was taken aback. We've been together for 2 years. I think it's time. But you didn't want to get married. And anyway, you don't love me. You have your career and everything else, and I have Dorian. Why do you need this? And why not? Why can't we be like normal people? What makes you think I don't love you? Caleb was at a loss. He didn't expect Jane to bring up something like this. And actually, she continued, I want kids. Not now, while I haven't defended my dissertation, but very soon I'll be free. And I think Dorian will like me. After all, he needs a mother. Jane, what are you saying? Did those cards upset you? Caleb hugged the girl by the shoulders and held her tightly. He felt her body shaking slightly from crying. Hey, baby. You can cry? I thought you were the most heartless woman on the planet. Idiot. Jane raised her tear-streaked face, but there was already a familiar sly smile on her lips. Caleb, you're right. The cards were nonsense. Don't bother with it. But I'm serious about marriage. Caleb held her tightly and looked out the window for a long time. Thoughts raced through his mind, and he couldn't keep up with them. He remembered the recent conversation with his father about how Caleb needed a woman and Dorian needed a mother. Suddenly, Freya's face appeared before his eyes. She was laughing. And then she was laughing menacingly. Caleb jerked involuntarily. What's wrong? Jane was startled. Everything's fine, the man replied thoughtfully. Let's not think about anything for now. 2 weeks had passed since that day, but Caleb couldn't get the spread Jane had done out of his head. Thoughts about Julia's identity kept resurfacing. What could this prediction mean? Dorian got sick. A regular seasonal cold laid the boy down with a high fever. Caleb didn't want to take sick leave, so he asked his father to look after the child while he worked. For Kevin, such a request was no burden. He loved his grandson and tried to spend as much time with him as possible. On his way home from work, Caleb suddenly decided to visit Lillian. He hadn't seen her in a long time and thought it was right to visit the elderly woman. Grabbing a pastry from a nearby bakery, he drove to her house. As he was dialing the apartment number on the intercom, Caleb suddenly recoiled from the opening door. Standing there was Lillian. Caleb? The woman was so surprised that she even began to stutter slightly. What are you doing here? Good evening, Lillian. Caleb was embarrassed. I just wanted to visit you. It's been a while. Thought maybe you needed some help. I'm fine, the woman smiled tensely. You're worrying for nothing. Sorry, I'm in a hurry right now. Let's meet another time. All right, Caleb nodded. Maybe you could come to us. Since Freya's death, you haven't visited us even once. Dorian doesn't even remember what you look like. That's not right. He's your grandson. Of course, Caleb. Despite her friendly demeanor, Caleb felt that Lillian wasn't thrilled about the prospect. I have to go. Can I give you a ride? No, it's close by. No need to worry. Goodbye. Lillian quickly left. Without knowing why, Caleb decided to follow her. He quietly drove behind her, trying not to be noticed. Thank God Lillian didn't know what car he drove. The woman got on the nearest bus. Caleb followed her. She got off after a few stops. The area seemed familiar. The daycare Dorian attended was nearby. A strange feeling gnawed at his stomach. Something was wrong. Lillian headed to the daycare. When she disappeared behind the fence, Caleb began to wait. Could she be secretly visiting Dorian? No, that couldn't be. His son would have definitely told him. And besides, he barely remembered his grandmother. The last time they saw each other was when he had just started talking. Any other grandmother would hold her granddaughter in her arms. But here... About 10 minutes later, Lillian left the daycare, but she wasn't alone. The woman was holding a girl, about the same age as Dorian, by the hand. The little girl was chatting happily, and Lillian just smiled silently in response. What is this? Caleb frowned. If she came to pick up a child, why refuse when I offered her a ride? It would have been much faster. This is silly. Am I just going to keep following her? I have a sick son at home, and I'm playing detective. Caleb waited until the woman and the girl disappeared around the corner. He was about to leave when a sudden thought occurred to him. Jumping out of the car, he entered the daycare building. Most of the children were already gone from the group, and the teacher was idly sitting at the table. Hello, Caitlin Ashford, he greeted the young woman. Caleb? Is something wrong with Dorian? You called this morning and said he was sick. Everything's fine, just a fever. Nothing serious? Caleb smiled. I was wondering if I could pay for the whole year. Is that possible? Yes, but you need to talk to the director about that. She's already left. Only tomorrow. Caleb pretended to be disappointed. All right, no big deal. I was just passing by. Caitlin Ashford, tell me. I saw a grandmother just now. She reminded me of an old acquaintance, but I'm afraid I might have been mistaken. She doesn't seem to have any grandchildren, but she left with a girl just now. Was it Lillian? The teacher was surprised. She was just here. Maybe someone else picked up another child. Yes, Caleb was delighted. That's my acquaintance's name. Could it really be her? That's Anastasia Aldridge's grandmother. Remember you asked me about her mother once? Dorian got upset that time. Really? Caleb was genuinely surprised. Now I understand why Dorian mistook Anastasia's mom for his own. It turns out it wasn't his mistake, but ours. I'm sorry I couldn't give you the address then, but it's not allowed. No big deal, Caleb reassured her. I haven't been in touch with that family for a long time, so I was surprised to see Lillian. Strange. I didn't even know she had a granddaughter. They moved here from somewhere else, as far as I remember. All right, sorry to bother you. Not at all, Caitlin feigned embarrassment. Caleb sensed she was almost expecting an invitation for a date. To prevent the young woman from harboring false hopes, he said a dry goodbye and left. Once in the car, he tried to organize his thoughts. Okay, he began, speaking aloud. A very strange story. A granddaughter suddenly appeared out of nowhere. The mother of this girl looks exactly like Freya. Lillian completely ignores our family. She pretends to be grieving, but in fact she seems perfectly fine. What's going on? Could Freya really have had a twin sister? Could it be? If so, that would at least explain why this woman didn't become a donor for Freya. But why didn't Lillian tell me anything? This concerns us too. I don't understand anything. I have to meet with Julia and talk to her. But that spread Jane did. If you believe the cards, meeting that woman will turn into a nightmare. To hell with those cards. I'm the master of my own fate. I'm not going to listen to some colourful cards. Caleb made a decision, but implementing it turned out to be not so easy. He berated himself for not following Lillian immediately. That way, he could have found out where Julia lived. In any case, she either picks up her daughter from Lillian, or Lillian takes the girl herself. The most reasonable thing was to wait until the next evening and follow her. Caleb watched from his car for the daycare entrance. Today he arrived early, even leaving work to make it before parents started picking up their children. Lillian appeared around 6 o'clock. She was dressed exactly as she was yesterday, so Caleb recognized her right away. If she visited us more often, Dorian would have told me long ago that his grandmother goes to the same group, the man thought. I hope they go straight home. I want to get back early myself. I've been sitting here for at least an hour and a half already. Lillian walked, holding the little girl's hand, towards the bus stop. They got on the approaching bus. Caleb noted that it was the same route as yesterday. Is she taking the girl to the same place? He muttered, following the bus. His assumption turned out to be correct. Lillian entered the building, glancing around first. Caleb instinctively ducked to avoid being seen by the woman. So, the man thought, what now? Sit and wait for Julia to show up for the child? What if she arrives late, or doesn't come at all? Dad, of course, can watch Dorian for as long as he wants, but I can't sit here all day. However, predictably, no one resembling Julia approached the building. Tired of watching in vain, Caleb drove home. He decided to meet with Lillian in person. For this, he went to the daycare the next day. As before Lillian picked up her granddaughter, Caleb met her at the gate. Seeing him, the woman was visibly frightened. "Lillian," Caleb began calmly, showing he had no intention of being aggressive. "I think we need to talk." "Caleb, how did you end up here?" "Hello, Anastasia," he addressed the girl. Seeing her anxiety, he quickly added, "Don't be afraid. Your grandmother and I are old acquaintances." "I'm Dorian Whittaker's dad. He's in the same group as you, right?" "Yes." The girl squeaked and seemed to calm down a bit. "Lillian, I think I should give you a ride home," Caleb said firmly. The woman paused for a moment and took a deep breath. When they got into the car, she suddenly asked, "Have you seen her?" "Who?" "Julia." "Yes, I've seen her. That's why I want to talk." Lillian's face turned grey. "Are you talking about Julia?" she whispered. "Yes, Julia." "Did you talk to her?" Caleb grimaced. "Tell me honestly, did Freya have a twin sister?" The woman suddenly stopped short. "Why do you—" She hesitated for a moment, then sighed and quietly added, "Yes, I couldn't tell you. I'm sorry." "You always knew?" Caleb asked wearily. "You know Freya could have been saved? A twin is the perfect donor." "You were so worried yourself." "Yes, donating part of your bone marrow isn't easy, but if it's needed to save a life, in the end, you can always pay. I don't think anyone would refuse money." "I didn't know." Tears welled up in the woman's eyes. "Julia only appeared recently. There was nothing that could be done. Don't blame me now." "What do you mean you didn't know? Are you saying you weren't even aware you gave birth to twins?" "Exactly," Lillian replied heatedly. "Don't ask how it happened. It's a very long story." "I won't discuss it." "I'm not asking," Caleb replied dryly. "I've learned what I wanted to know." "You have no idea. I nearly went crazy when I saw a double of my Freya." "Why no idea? You're not alone, Caleb. I'm asking just one thing. Don't seek a meeting with Julia. She's a terrible person. You could become a victim of her schemes. She's not Freya. Yes, they look alike, but they're different people. Please don't harbour false hopes." "All right," Caleb nodded. Now that everything was clear, he wasn't planning to meet that woman. "I'm asking just one thing. Don't ignore your grandson. Dorian doesn't remember you, but he often asks. It's hard to explain to a child why his own grandmother doesn't want to see him. I can't exactly tell him you're dead. I've been dead for a long time, Lillian suddenly said quietly. Caleb was so startled that he braked sharply. Don't pay attention, son. It's just sentimentality. The real me disappeared when Freya got sick. Caleb drove Lillian and Anastasia home. When they left, he continued to stare at the windows of her apartment for a long time. Something about this whole story didn't sit right with Caleb. What Lillian said seemed logical, but his intuition told him she wasn't telling the whole truth. As promised, he didn't seek a meeting with Julia, and she didn't appear at the daycare. He saw Lillian several times when picking up his son, but she, as before, wasn't in a hurry to publicize their relationship. Relationships with Jane were improving. It seemed the young woman was serious about marrying Caleb, and he wasn't particularly resisting. The day came when Caleb decided to introduce Jane to Dorian. "Dorian," he addressed his son, "someone's coming over today. Please behave." "I always behave, Dad," the boy replied seriously. "Is it your friend?" "You could say that. I've been wanting to introduce you for a while. Even Grandpa insists." "Grandpa?" Dorian protested. "That's not fair. Grandpa knows them, and I don't?" "You'll meet soon," Caleb smiled. "Just don't be difficult." Jane arrived in the afternoon with a huge cake. According to Caleb, she knew his son had a sweet tooth. "Hoping to win him over?" he asked, greeting her. "Why not?" Jane smiled. "I don't really know how to deal with kids, but I think you should talk to them as equals. By the way, I want some of that cake too." Dorian was already waiting on the couch. When he saw the guest was a woman, he was quite surprised. "Well, meet each other," Caleb said awkwardly. "This is Dorian, my beloved son, and this is Jane, my friend." "Hello, Dorian," Jane greeted cheerfully and handed him the cake. "This is for you. Your dad said you love sweets. Honestly, I love them too." "Hello," Dorian replied, intrigued. "Yeah, I do." "Thanks." "Are you really Dad's friend? Why hasn't he told me about you?" "It was our little secret," Jane smiled. "But no secret can be kept forever. You have to share them with loved ones eventually." "Got it," Dorian pursed his lips. "You're a very pretty friend." Jane blushed. She didn't expect such a comment from a child. "All right, let's have some tea," Caleb quickly suggested to ease the tension. Over tea, everyone relaxed, and the conversation flowed naturally. Caleb was relieved to see that Dorian and Jane quickly found common ground. His son clearly liked her. They even had a race eating the cake. Before she left, Jane promised to visit again. Dorian hugged her goodbye and whispered something in her ear. When Caleb was alone with his son, the boy suddenly said, "Dad?" "What, son?" "You're going to marry Jane, right?" Caleb didn't immediately know what to say. He looked seriously at the boy. "Why do you think that?" "I'm not a little kid anymore," Dorian frowned, "and Grandpa tells me everything." "Actually, Grandpa, how does he know?" "Wait, why are you and Grandpa discussing this?" "We have no secrets. He always says we'll have a new mom someday." "I'll definitely talk to him about that. But for now, okay. Would you like Jane to be part of our family? I know it's early to talk about this, Sal, but Jane's great. She's fun and kind. I'd love for her to live with us." "But I already have a mum." "Wouldn't she be against it?" Dorian asked. "What do you mean?" Caleb didn't understand. "Of course you have a mum, but she's in heaven now. I don't think she'd be against it. Her main concern was our happiness. If you like listening to Grandpa, know this. He's the one who started the search for a new mom." "I know," Dorian nodded. "But Mum's not in heaven." "Why do you say that?" "I saw her again. Even if you didn't believe me, she came again the other day." The boy suddenly fell silent. Caleb saw a struggle on his son's face. "When did you see her?" he asked. Dorian hesitated. "I can't say. It's a secret. Although Jane said secrets should be shared with loved ones," he added after a pause. Caleb looked seriously at his son. "Dorian, I think this is very important. I don't think anything bad will happen if you share this secret with your father. The boy hesitated. At some point, one side of his inner struggle won, and he spoke. Mom came to see me at daycare. She's also Anastasia's mom. Caleb felt a chill inside. She approached me and asked my name. When I answered, she hugged me tightly and said she'd take me with her. But I have to keep it a secret. She also sends me candy through Anastasia all the time. You won't tell her I told you, will you? What if she gets mad? No, son, I won't tell her, Caleb quickly reassured him. But now there was no one to reassure him. Inside, everything was boiling and mixing with a kind of emptiness. The man didn't understand what was happening. Clearly, Tatiana was communicating with Dorian. But how could she know he was his son? Caleb pondered. Damn it. I introduced myself as Dorian Whittaker's dad. But what does she have to do with my son? An aunt? Why would she want to take him? Now Caleb had to meet this woman. There were too many unanswered questions. Caleb didn't notice when he fell asleep. He had a terrible dream. Freya. She was sitting on the bank of a huge river, wrapped in 4 lines. When Caleb approached to hug her, she suddenly jumped into the water. He didn't even have time to grab her. All that was left in his hands was a tuft of hair. Caleb jumped in after her but stopped at the shore. The water was red like blood and completely opaque. He called out to Freya, but there was only silence in response. Caleb fell to his knees and sobbed. Suddenly the sound of splashing water caught his attention. He looked at the river and saw her. Only it wasn't Freya. The woman's face was covered in blood. But there was a ghastly smile on it. She raised her hand and tore off her face. What Caleb thought was a face was just a mask. She repeated the action over and over, each time revealing a new face. Only the expressions changed. Finally she stopped. She came close, sat on the sand, placed both palms on his cheeks. She looked straight into his eyes. Caleb felt truly terrified. He couldn't look away, and the more he looked, the more he understood. This woman was anyone but his wife. She made a sudden jerk as if trying to break his neck. Caleb woke up abruptly. He was drenched in sweat. At first, he even thought he was covered in blood, but gradually he caught his breath and came to his senses. What the hell? It's all Jane's fault. She predicted some nonsense, messed with my head. Naturally, I still haven't come to terms with Freya's death. And now this Tatiana, trying to claim my son for some reason. Caleb couldn't forget his dream. After it repeated several times, he decided to tell Jane everything. He thought that as an esoteric, she might shed some light on the situation. Jane listened attentively and pondered. Well, the first scenes I can explain. Your wife wrapped in 4 lines. Understandable. Jumping into a river of blood in principle too. It's her illness, which you couldn't share. That's why you couldn't enter and suffered on the shore. But after that, Jane frowned. The bloody clothes, the masks. Can I do a reading for you? No, thanks. Last time was enough, Caleb cut her off. And it feels like your prediction is what formed this dream. Jane sighed. Caleb, may I ask an impertinent question? Go ahead. Did you know your wife well? What do you mean? Well, how long were you married? 3 years. 2 years after the wedding, Dorian was born. And a year later, she passed away. I see. And how long did you know her before that? Not long. About 6 months. I fell in love back then. Freya was the kind of woman, how to say, you see her and immediately know you can't let someone like her slip away. She'd be gone before you even blink. I felt she was my person. Jane unexpectedly laughed. Oh, sorry. I didn't mean to offend you. I just can't understand how you feel something like that. For instance, am I not your person? That's different, Jane. Don't start. To me, it's the same. Jane became serious. No offense, but it looks like you fell head over heels for a woman you barely knew who married you for some specific purpose. Only her goals are unclear. And now this sister suddenly appeared. She paused for a few seconds, then said, I have a theory. Just listen. Don't interrupt. I know it sounds fantastical and absurd, but still. Caleb nodded wearily. All right, I'll listen. Considering what's been happening lately, nothing can surprise me. Jane looked him in the eye. I think there's no twin. The woman you saw, that's your wife. Caleb tensed. I don't know how that's possible, but then everything falls into place. Lillian's strange behavior, the conversation with Dorian at daycare, even the dream, and the reading. Tarot never lies, Caleb. The card that appeared for this woman described everything. But that's nonsense. Caleb couldn't hold back. You promised not to interrupt, Jane protested. She took a deep breath. I think Freya led a double life. Why was she cremated? What's wrong with being buried in the ground? Why are you so cynical? Caleb asked, frowning. That was her last wish. She didn't want to be buried. I couldn't betray her like that. All right, fair enough. Then explain her mother's behavior. I refuse to believe a daughter's death would make a woman refuse to see her grandson. She's in her right mind. Something's off and you feel it. Logic makes you doubt. But it's logic that forms the basis of my theory. It's impossible, Caleb shouted. If you keep spouting this nonsense, I'll leave and never come back. Do as you wish, Jane replied indifferently. But let's check something. You have nothing to lose anyway. Then meet whoever you want, sort out your relationships, and try to find your truth. Caleb calmed down a bit and sat on the couch. Jane's indifference cooled him down. It was clear she wasn't trying to prove anything but genuinely wanted to help. I have a friend. She can help. But her field, let's say, is specific. What field? She communicates with the dead. Caleb got up and headed for the door. Here we go. Wait, Jane grabbed his hand. You promised. She can really help. You can believe or not, but she's never been wrong. I didn't believe it myself until I experienced it. Are you joking? Not at all. Jane's tone made it clear she wasn't lying. Rachel is a medium, a very strong one. Thanks to her, we found out where Grandpa hid his will. Considering the document was with someone completely unfamiliar to our family in another city, finding it on our own was impossible. Okay, let's say. What will we ask her? We'll ask her to summon your wife's spirit, and to rule out deception, we won't tell her any details. She won't need anything, you'll see, and she won't take any money. It's a sin to pay for such abilities. Caleb squinted. Keep in mind, Jane, if this is another joke, I'll keep my word. We'll break up and don't try to get back together. Got it, Jane smirked. I understand the risks. That's why I'm so confident. Rachel's office was in a prestigious business centre. When Caleb parked the car, he didn't immediately realise they needed to go there. He looked at Jane, puzzled. Why are you looking at me like that? Jane laughed. Yes, Rachel works here. I told you she's a very good medium. She can afford the rent. Or did you think we were going to a village to see an old lady? No, but you said she doesn't need money. Where does she get her income? We rented an office here ourselves. I know what it costs. Rachel has been working for decades. She has clients you don't speak of aloud. Believe me, this woman will never be at a loss. If someone tries to cheat her, she'll get them even in the afterlife. Caleb sighed. All right. Did you bring what I asked? Yes. He took out a photo of Freya and her old hairbrush. Look, when we enter the office, don't say anything. Just give these to Rachel and sit down. The less she knows, the better the result. Usually it's the other way around. Usually. Have you been to a medium? No, but on TV. Don't confuse commercial nonsense with real knowledge. All right. I still can't believe I agreed to this. Caleb sighed. They took the elevator to the top floor. The hall gleamed with polished marble and mirrors. Live plants stood everywhere in pots. Caleb felt uneasy. Behind one of the tall glass doors, a pleasant-looking young woman in a business suit greeted them. Good day, Jane said. We're here to see Rachel Kensington. One moment, the secretary muttered and disappeared behind a door. When they entered the office, Caleb was amazed. The room looked very stylish and modern. It resembled a therapist's office more than a medium's lair. A tall, full-figured woman in an elegant dress stood up from the desk. Jane, Rachel smiled. "It's been so long since we last met." "I was surprised when you called," she turned to Caleb. "And this must be Caleb?" He shook Rachel's hand. Her grip was firm, which reassured him. "Please, sit down." The woman gestured to a leather couch covered with a colourful throw. "So, what's the issue?" Caleb handed her the items. "Here," he said awkwardly. Rachel examined the photo and the brush thoughtfully. Then she sat in a chair opposite and closed her eyes. Several minutes passed. Nothing happened. Caleb even thought she had fallen asleep. He looked at Jane, puzzled, but she remained calm. Suddenly, Rachel opened her eyes. "Caleb," she said, "what you've brought is very interesting. I dare say the photo is of your wife, and this item belonged to her?" "Yes," Caleb nodded. Rachel looked at him intently. "You've experienced a terrible loss. It's been years, but you still feel the impact." Caleb wasn't surprised. On the contrary, he thought Jane had told her everything in advance. "Tell me," Rachel spoke suddenly, "did you love this woman?" Caleb was taken aback. "Yes, of course. She was my wife." Rachel looked deeply into his eyes. "You see, what I'm about to tell you might upset you greatly. That's okay. I'm ready for anything." The medium nodded slowly. "Really? Then tell me one thing. Why do you think your wife died?" "More precisely, not like that. She didn't feel physical pain, only emotional." "Impossible." "As far as I know, at the last stage of cancer, a person experiences terrible pain. Yes, Freya was constantly on medication. I saw her exhausted face. Those convulsions." "Don't interrupt," Rachel sternly cut him off. She suddenly fell silent, fingering the teeth of the brush. Caleb was about to speak himself, but she continued, "Don't be surprised, but she's still among the living. Not her spirit, but she herself." Caleb turned pale. Rachel squinted. "Moreover, you've already had contact. She's known by another name now, and she has specific plans for you, specifically for your child." Caleb felt a chill inside. "What plans?" "She needs the boy." "Dorian," Caleb whispered in despair. Rachel nodded. "Wait, but how can Freya be alive? I saw her die. I attended the cremation." "You saw her die? But did you see the dead body?" "No. The doctor kicked me out of the room when Freya's agony began." Rachel tilted her head. "All right. And at the funeral? Tell me how it went." Caleb thought for a moment. The service was held in a funeral home. The casket was open for everyone to say goodbye. But there weren't many people. Only relatives. Freya didn't have friends, so a couple of old acquaintances were there. "Did you know them?" "No," Caleb admitted. "To be honest, I saw them for the first time. 2 men and a woman. One man, an old shriveled guy, but in an expensive suit. He introduced himself, I think as Jasper Lockwood, or something similar. The other man was much younger, also well-dressed. He said they once worked together. And the woman cried the whole time. I didn't really remember her, just her sobbing." She kept stroking Freya's hand. The rest were all relatives. From her side, only her mother. Rachel looked at him intently. How did the mother behave? She just sat on the bench, not moving, just stared at the casket. I thought it was strange she wasn't crying. Maybe she cried all her tears while Freya was sick. After the funeral, she stopped communicating with us. Dad thought she went crazy, but that's not it. Rachel closed her eyes and nodded. Freya was cremated? Yes. After the service, the funeral home workers took the casket to the crematorium basement. I wanted to be there when it was ready. They escorted me. Rachel looked at him. So you saw the deceased? In the casket. In the casket. Where else would she be? And yet, was the casket closed? Yes, I saw it go into the furnace. Then they handed me the urn with the ashes. Rachel sighed deeply. I see. She leaned back in her chair. Usually I communicate with those who've passed so they can say something important to their loved ones. But this is a different case. It doesn't matter what you think. Freya is alive. Caleb couldn't breathe. What you do with this information is not my concern. But no, this woman is not who you think she is. She's dangerous. The most sensible thing to do is to protect the boy from her. Wait. But how is this possible? Rachel looked at him intently. Even if I tell you everything I see, you won't believe it. You're skeptical. Caleb, I understand. Unfortunately, our world is such that subtle matters are equated with fiction and charlatanism. I thought so too until I experienced it myself. When my extrasensory abilities awakened, I was scared. I thought I was going insane. I was raised in a family of an engineer and a doctor. You understand. The world of magic was as distant from our family as Alpha Centauri is from the solar system. However, the most sensible thing I could do was accept my gift, and I advise you to do the same. Caleb didn't know what to say. Rachel suddenly smiled. You probably think Jane just told me everything and we're fooling you together. Yes, exactly. Caleb nodded. You're used to relying on logic. It's a normal trait of the human mind. However, our brain has a much more complex structure. Logic is just a small part of it. You've been interested in this yourself, I know. Remember that conversation with your wife? The one that happened in a picturesque place near Lake Tahoe? Caleb flinched. A memory surfaced. How they camped at Lake Tahoe. The honeymoon. Freya. They did discuss something like that, but... How do you know that? He asked in a trembling voice. Rachel tapped her temple. From here. Jane couldn't have known. Right? Caleb was silent. Rachel smiled. I can't help you any further, dear ones. Thank you for visiting. Take care. Caleb was in shock. What was that? In the car, he turned to Jane. Jane, I don't know what just happened. Jane looked at him. Just accept it, as Rachel advised. Now it's necessary. Of course I did. But I wasn't particularly interested in the results. She didn't even want to know the baby's gender in advance. And I was far from all this. Why wouldn't I trust my wife? Freya just said everything was fine, and I took it at face value. I worked a lot back then. No time to run around hospitals. Her mother handled everything. Jane shook her head. Oh, Caleb. It seems her mother was aware of the situation from the start. But I don't understand. Why did they hide the fact of a second child's birth? Caleb clenched his fists resolutely. I'll find out everything. But you're right. Let's do everything we can to protect Dorian first. Listen. Freya knows which daycare he goes to, and she knows where we live. We need to move him urgently, but where? Jane thought for a moment. I think my dad can stay with him for a while. No, that won't work. Freya knows your dad's address too. Who knows what this woman is capable of? If she managed to pull all this off... I'll take Dorian. I'm home anyway. Not attending college. He'll be safe with me. And your wife definitely won't find out where I live. But we need to prepare Dorian somehow. Caleb sighed. We'll work it out with Dorian, especially since he asked if you were going to be his new mom. What? Jane's eyes widened. I never thought. Surprisingly, Dorian quickly agreed to temporarily move in with Jane. He really liked her, and the prospect of not going to daycare and not waking up early seemed like a gift from fate. Kevin was surprised to learn that Dorian suddenly wanted to stay with Jane, so he decided to have a serious talk with his son. Son, tell me, what are you up to? All sorts of thoughts are running through my mind. Don't feed me nonsense. You say he doesn't like daycare. Even if so, what's wrong with me? I'm home, retired. I'd happily watch Dorian. Kevin looked at his son intently. Caleb smiled. So, you're not as dumb as I thought. You listened to your father's advice? Yes. We talked. I was wrong to think Jane didn't want a family. She and Dorian are in perfect harmony. So. Kevin nodded approvingly. Well done. Honestly, I'm very happy for you. It's high time, son. I can't stand seeing you suffer after Freya's death. Caleb hesitated. He wanted to tell his father that Freya was alive, that she had done something terrible, but without proof it was pointless. Kevin would just laugh at him. With all this esotericism. I'll expose this snake, he thought. Then I'll talk to Dad. Finding Freya on his own was nearly impossible. She could appear by chance, like at the daycare. Or you needed to know where she was to ambush her. The only way to establish contact with her was to pressure Lillian, and Caleb decided to do just that. Late in the evening, he arrived at her house. Taking a deep breath, he rang the doorbell. Careful footsteps sounded behind the door. He noticed something flicker in the peephole. But no one opened. "Lillian," he called loudly, "I know you're home. Let's not attract the neighbors' attention. I won't leave until we talk." The lock clicked. The woman stood at the door with a frightened expression. She didn't dare open it fully. "Now you'll let me in. We'll talk calmly. And then I'll leave." "Why did you come?" Lillian asked, displeased. Caleb looked at her intently. "You know very well why. If you don't let me in, I'll go to the police and let them deal with everything happening here." The threat worked. She opened the door wider and let her son-in-law in. "Is the girl asleep?" Caleb asked. "Yes. Let's keep it down. I don't want her to wake up. The child is nervous as it is." Caleb smirked. "Why is she nervous?" "Well, with a mother like that, it's no surprise. Lillian, let's be honest. Is Anastasia my daughter?" The woman recoiled. "Where did you get that idea? She's Tanya's daughter. You have nothing to do with it." Caleb raised an eyebrow. "Tanya's? Or Freya's? Stop it. I know everything." Lillian sank onto the bench, defeated. "But how?" "That's none of your business," Caleb said harshly. "But if you know everything, why did you come to me?" "I need to meet Freya." "No," the woman cried. "Caleb, save yourself. Why do you need this?" Caleb clenched his fists. "Tell me one thing. Does Freya want to take Dorian?" Lillian took a deep breath. "Let's go to the kitchen. This will be a long conversation. I understand it's pointless to deny it now." The woman began making coffee. When everything was ready, she sat on the edge of a chair. She took a deep breath. "I'll tell you only what won't harm you. Freya, or rather Tatiana. My daughter's real name is that." Back then, the gangster wars of the wild times had just subsided. The atmosphere in the country was tense. I always feared Tanya would go down the wrong path. A beautiful girl, you understand, but she had a good head on her shoulders. She didn't stoop to outright dirty deeds. Tanya started living with some man. She didn't tell me anything. I only knew he was somehow connected to either power or big business. A complicated person, in short. He was married, and Tanya was his mistress. But she had something that intrigued him, because she twisted him around her finger. Then he was found dead, in his own apartment building. A contract killing. You probably even heard about it. No surprise. Business disputes. I worried about Tanya. Back then, they usually eliminated everyone connected to the victim. But it was no longer the old days. And Tanya quickly rose after that incident. That man paid for her education in economics. While living with him, she managed to get a diploma and learn a good profession. Old acquaintances of her former lover helped her get a prestigious job. Tanya became not just an accountant, but the head of the economic department. And at 22, can you imagine? She lived separately, visited occasionally, but never invited me over. I didn't mind. I understood she had a specific social circle. Who knows what they'd think if they saw me with her? A few years passed like that. I knew nothing about Tanya's life, where she worked, what she did, what men she was involved with. I didn't want to find out back then. I saw she had money. Her car alone was worth a fortune. But one day, she came to me in the middle of the night, all nervous, said she was preparing to move. She'd already bought an apartment in another city. She answered all my questions vaguely. Then she moved. I moved in quickly. Tanya told me not to bring any belongings with me, just the essentials. In this apartment where we are now, I moved in with nothing, but everything was here. Furniture, appliances, even clothes. Tanya said she'd live with me now. She told me what was going on. She admitted she'd been working for some scary person for years. helping him with shady dealings. But now she was tired and wanted out of the business. She didn't provide any details. When I suggested going to the police and confessing everything, she just laughed. "Mum, it's like you're living for the first day. I'd be happy to go to jail, but they won't leave me alone. Their people are everywhere. And you'd better not imagine what they can do to me. I know too much." "Tanya, but how do we live now?" "Very simply." She took a passport from her purse and showed it to me. The details were someone else's. Now, according to the documents, her name was Freya. Not only the name and surname were different, even the age and place of birth. I was alarmed. "Sweetheart, where did you get this? This passport is fake." "No, it's genuine. Now I'm a completely different person." Jane smiled and handed me another document. "By the way, you are too." I couldn't believe my eyes. "How is this possible? What have you done? What about acquaintances?" Tanya looked at me intently. "If you want to live, you'll have to find new ones." Her voice had such firmness. I didn't dare argue. "This apartment is registered to your new details. You'll have to get used to the new name, and under no circumstances, don't contact old acquaintances. Don't go where we lived before. Just forget," I cried. "What have you done, sweetheart?" "It's too late to cry now, Mom. We need to start a new life. These people will be looking for me. Changing cities and identities will confuse the trail. But I wouldn't rely on it too much. They have connections. I don't think they'll leave me alone so easily. But we have some time. Let's hope for the best." We lived like that for several months. Then, Tanya met you. She set a goal to get married as soon as possible. In her opinion, it would finally throw the gangsters off her trail. Then, she got pregnant. Her happiness knew no bounds. She almost forgot about her past life. But one day, when she was leaving the prenatal clinic, someone called her by her old name. She turned instinctively. Standing before her was an old man. You saw this person at her funeral. Jasper Lockwood. "Well, we meet again, Tanya," the elderly man in an expensive suit said gently. Tanya froze. Her tongue wouldn't obey. Her legs turned to jelly. "I missed you, dear. Where did you disappear so suddenly? I've been searching all over for you. Finally found you," he chuckled. "Are you afraid of me? Let's go to the car, talk." "No," Tanya recoiled. "I have to go home. My husband is waiting." Jasper laughed hoarsely. "Husband? Don't make me laugh, girl. That man has no rights over you unless—" He pointed at her belly. Tanya instinctively pressed both hands to it. "Don't you dare," she hissed. "Jasper, leave me alone." "I haven't told anyone anything. And I won't. You can rest easy. Just let me live." "I know, Julia. You'll never tell anyone our secrets. And who would believe you anyway? You don't have any proof. After you ran away, my people made sure everything was thoroughly cleaned up." "Then what do you want from me?" Julia asked, staring at him in confusion. "You're so naive. I'm amazed at how you can be both a brilliant accountant and such a fool. I only want you, Julia. Let's end this charade and come back to me." "Never," Julia replied angrily. "Jasper, it's over between us. I have a husband now, I love him, and we're going to have kids. Let's just go our separate ways peacefully. Let's just forget everything." "Forget?" Jasper laughed. "I remember too much to forget everything, and I don't remember too little to not remember. I'm not going to rush you, sweetheart. Think it over." With those words, the old man got into the back seat of a luxurious black car parked nearby, slamming the door demonstratively. Only when the car disappeared from view could Julia move. And then the day of the birth arrived. After a long pause, Lillian continued. "You, Caleb, were returning from a business trip and didn't make it back in time. Julia gave birth to twins. She knew she was expecting twins but didn't want to tell you. She wanted to surprise you. When the babies were born, people from that old man, Jasper Lockwood, came to the hospital. He approached me in the corridor and said, 'I'll never forget that voice.' 'Scarlett, nice to meet you. You probably don't know me, although maybe Julia did mention me. This man knew my real name. I was paralyzed. Then he handed me a piece of paper. I unfolded it. It was a marriage certificate. According to it, my daughter was married to this old man. Finally we meet, the man laughed hoarsely. But, as far as I know, we have a little problem. You see, Julia got carried away. She got married, and with fake documents at that. And now she's had kids. She doesn't want to come home. Although I'm ready to forgive her everything, I love the fool. Can't help myself. And here's what we'll do, Scarlett. Julia just gave birth to twins, a boy and a girl. We'll let her keep the boy so she doesn't grieve too much, but I'll take the girl with me. If she wants to see her daughter, she can come to me. I'll welcome her like family, tell her that. With those words, the old man left. I couldn't believe my ears. That decrepit old man with terrifying eyes was my daughter's husband, the very person she ran from, leaving everything behind and choosing a new life. I didn't understand her. Honestly, I didn't understand. But now something had to be done. The old man kept his word and took the girl. It was nothing for him to bribe the doctors. When they brought Julia her son, she looked at the nurses and the doctor in confusion. When she asked where the girl was, everyone pretended not to understand her. There was only one child. When I was finally allowed into the ward, I told her everything. Together with my daughter, the real Freya, we decided to hide everything from you, Caleb. Is it clear now? Caleb interrupted the story. But what happened next? The illness? The funeral? Julia didn't know what to do. She was sure Jasper would get rid of her and the kids as soon as she returned. She couldn't take that risk. The girl was a kind of collateral, and the old man wouldn't get rid of her. But Julia had already resigned herself to never seeing her daughter. Jasper contacted her several times, reminding her of his offer. But my daughter was scared. This fear became so strong that she began to lose weight rapidly. You probably remember. Her milk supply suddenly dried up, and that's when Julia came up with a terrible plan. She realized that Jasper wouldn't leave her alone as long as she was alive, or as long as he was alive. Looking at her face, gaunt from stress, she thought she could pretend to be terminally ill. She proposed this plan to her mother. I resisted desperately. "Mom, listen," Julia tried to convince me. "You have to understand, if Jasper finds out I'm terminally ill, he'll have all the evidence. There's a chance, however slim, that he'll leave me alone and return my daughter. Why would he want a sick woman? Think about it." "But what if not, daughter?" I argued. "And how do you plan to fake an illness?" "Nowadays you can buy anything, as long as you have money. And I do. I've earned a lot in my life, and I have nowhere to spend it. I can't even tell Caleb about this money. When I got pregnant, I thought I'd leave the money for the kids, but so much time will pass, anything can happen. But here they can be of real use. I'll pay the doctors, buy all the tests. I can lose even more weight. Everyone will think I have leukemia at such a stage that it can't be cured. Jasper will definitely come to see for himself. He won't want to see me dying." "Okay. And then?" Her mother frowned. "He'll see you're sick. Maybe he'll want to help. Let him help. They'll tell him there's nothing that can be done. All right, let's say so. But he's not a stupid man. If nothing can be done, death follows. I doubt he won't want to verify if you're gone." Julia thought for a moment. She bit her lower lip so hard that drops of blood appeared. "Then I'll have to stage it." "Are you out of your mind?" her mother shouted. "Think about your husband and kids. How will they feel seeing you suffer? You're lying. You're only digging yourself deeper, fool." "And what do you suggest?" Tears burst from Julia's eyes. "Confess everything to Caleb. He loves you and will understand. Everyone has skeletons in the closet, but the longer you hide them, the worse it gets. You won't be able to get out later. How do you imagine that? Hi, Caleb, my past is haunting me. I'll have to die, but you, most importantly, don't worry. Like that. Mom, that's just stupid. If I'm going to play, I'll play to the end. Julia, I would never say this because you're my daughter, but you're a terrible person. You know, maybe you should go back to Jasper. You're two of a kind. Don't ruin Caleb's life with your antics. You don't want to tell him the truth, but you want to keep lying, and in such a twisted way. Pull off this charade? Then what? How will you come back to life for Caleb? Maybe I won't. Most likely I'll have to start over from scratch. Julia, her mother looked at her reproachfully. You need to know when to stop. Especially now that you have kids. You're not alone. Okay, your husband. You never loved him. But the kids and the girl. She's still with Jasper. Aren't you afraid for her? When I die, she won't be of any use to him. He'll return my daughter. I'll talk to him before my death to have him hand the child over to you. He won't refuse. I know. And Dorian can stay with Caleb. That would be fair. Julia did everything as she planned. She wasn't too concerned that her act was hurting people. Jasper believed in her illness. He sat in her ward for a long time and cried. I ran into him at the hospital once. He promised to return the child to me after Julia's death, and he kept his word. After the funeral, I never saw him again. Julia played her part so well that she fooled everyone. She had already prepared her escape routes. When the girl was with me, my daughter took her and disappeared for 5 years. A couple of months ago, she suddenly reappeared and announced that there was nothing to fear now. Jasper was dead. Besides, she became his sole heir and was now as rich as the devil. All she needed was to get her son back. That's why she returned here. That meeting at the kindergarten was pure coincidence. Julia herself didn't expect things to turn out so conveniently. I don't know. Julia wants to take Dorian. At first, she just wanted to take him from the kindergarten. She even talked to him a few times to get him used to her. He didn't even need to get used to it. He immediately understood she was his mum. But then things didn't go according to plan. The boy got sick and stopped attending the group. She has no way to get into your house unnoticed, especially since when you work, Dorian spends all his time with his grandfather. And now he's gone somewhere. This fool watches your apartment every day. I'm surprised you haven't noticed her yet. Really? Caleb was amazed. Indeed. Where is she now? I think she's still there. I hope you've hidden the boy well. She won't stop at anything. If Julia sets her mind to something, she'll achieve it at any cost. I've already realized that, the man smirked. All right, give me her number. I'll arrange a meeting. Hello, Freya, Caleb said dryly into the phone when he heard a dull voice on the other end. I'm listening. Didn't think you'd call, the woman replied after a long pause. Was that Mom? Yeah, we need to meet. You think? The wife laughed nervously. I don't know what you know, but for some reason I think my plan went down the drain. And now the meeting is just pointless. I'll leave, Caleb, and never remind you of myself. Wait, what do you want? Nothing anymore. Freya. No, Julia. I know everything. Well, a lot, but not everything. I think I have the right to get the rest of the information. What do you need it for? Julia asked indifferently. Because you're my wife. Have some respect. You have no idea what we've been through. Caleb, I was your wife for a very short time. Essentially, you were married not to me, but to my fake identity. It's not right to call me that. I never loved you. The whole marriage was just a cover, and not a very successful one. Be that as it may, Caleb countered, but you want to get Dorian back, and I just found out I have a daughter. We can come to an agreement. An agreement? About what, exactly? Meeting on weekends? That's nonsense. I can't take that risk. I could easily be recognized. You have no idea what my past is tied to. And if I wasn't afraid of prison before, now that the threat of death is gone, I definitely don't want to end up behind bars. Julia, please, let's meet. A simple dialogue is already a step forward. I don't know why you're insisting, though it's quite possible you've decided to punish me and set me up. I can't risk it, sorry. What setup? Think about it. What sense does it make for me to hand you over to the police or criminals? I just want to know the whole truth. All right, Julia agreed after thinking. But we'll meet on my terms. I'll call. When the woman hung up, Caleb still couldn't come to his senses. He couldn't fully believe everything he had learned. The man didn't understand why he was so insistent on finding out the truth. It would have been much easier to let her go and never remember. But the children made him move further and further. Caleb went to Jane and told her everything he knew himself. He tried to speak quietly so that Dorian wouldn't become an involuntary listener. I still don't understand why you want to meet her. This woman is capable of anything. You remember what the cards warned about? And Rachel? Now you probably won't say it's all nonsense. Jane, it's my duty to find out everything. Duty to whom or what? How will you explain the sudden appearance of a mother to Dorian? Think about the child. He's still young, he'll forget easily. But he understands everything. Don't traumatize him. Yes, you're right. But now I've learned that I have a daughter. She's only your daughter biologically. This girl is completely different. She knows nothing about you, and I don't think it would be good for her to find out. Leave them alone. Don't play with fate. It won't end well. What terrible thing could happen? I didn't want to tell you, but I did a reading. The cards are very bad. You shouldn't meet your wife. Please, listen to me. Who knows what your cards said? Yes, it coincided once, but that's more likely a coincidence. Tarot doesn't lie. I've already told you. Treat the prediction seriously, Caleb. You're putting yourself and your loved ones in danger. You won't convince me. Understand? If it were about you, you probably wouldn't just stand on the sidelines. You're right, Jane conceded. But I'm asking you, be careful. Don't give in. She's capable of manipulating. Remember, all you need is the truth. Of course, Caleb frowned. Do you really think this woman still has any influence on me? He kissed Jane on the cheek and left the apartment. There were hardly any cars in the yard. Caleb looked around but didn't see anyone resembling Julia. After standing like that for about 5 minutes, he was about to reach for his phone when one of the cars honked at him. The headlights flashed. Caleb approached the car. Julia rolled down the window and nodded her head, inviting him to get into the car. Well, hello, he said with a heavy sigh. Hello, Julia made an attempt to smile. Here we are, meeting again. She was dressed exactly the same as during their last meeting. Even her hair was styled in the same way. I'm surprised you didn't even try to change your appearance, Caleb noted. And why should I? If someone's looking, they'll find you. Even if you have a new face, it's much easier to stop the search. You didn't do a very good job of that, it seems. I was foolish then. I thought with new documents I could hide, but now it doesn't matter. So, we're going somewhere now. I want to be in a calm environment. Otherwise, your girlfriend will probably call the cops. She must know everything. How do you know about Jane? You're so naive. I've been watching you. It wasn't hard to figure out where you go. And thanks to old connections, I easily found out. Who? Dorian is probably living with her now. He's not with Kevin, I know that for sure. And the girl is smart, doesn't show up outside with him. You could learn from her. She's much smarter. All right, we'll go where you say. They were silent the whole way. The car turned off the highway and soon left the city. Julia stopped at a suburban cottage. Here we are. Get out and go straight through the gate. It's open. I don't want anyone to see us. Why such precautions? It looks like people only live here in the summer. You can tell it's a summer house. I chose this place specifically. Anastasia and I lived here for the last year, moved right after Jasper died. Caleb entered the house. It was spacious but well furnished. There were children's toys scattered everywhere. It seemed Julia wasn't lying when she said she lived here with her daughter. I still live here. I sent Anastasia to daycare so she wouldn't get in the way. And my mum is happy to take care of her. She tells everyone it's her grandniece. The parents are oil rig workers, so she's visiting her. People are willing to believe any nonsense if it sounds even a bit like the truth. But tell them the whole truth and they won't believe it for anything. Why is everything set up like this? And you have a very nice place here, Caleb noted. Thanks, but drop all these niceties. We're not here for that. Come to the kitchen. Caleb obediently went in the direction indicated. Want some coffee? Julia asked. I won't refuse. The usual, with milk and no sugar. Wow. You remember? I never forget anything, the woman noted. She approached the coffee maker and, after a bit of fiddling, soon placed a cup of aromatic coffee in front of him. The man even felt a slight twinge of nostalgia. His wife used to make him the same coffee every morning. He realized he had called the woman by the wrong name out of habit. Sorry, Julia. Tell me, why did you do it? I had no choice. The woman sighed deeply and sat down opposite him. You could have told me everything from the start. I would have understood. You just think so. In reality, you wouldn't have even listened to me. I know people well and rarely make mistakes. Just think. When your wife tells you about her criminal past, being chased by gangsters, how would you react? Honestly. At the very least, you would have just left, slamming the door. You're wrong to think that. I loved you more than anything in the world. Caleb, love is a mutual feeling. It doesn't happen that one loves and the other doesn't. It means neither loves, just one is mistaken. So, you were mistaken. You were infatuated. I worked very hard to charm you. And quite successfully. You fell for it so easily that I couldn't believe my success. Everything was going well until I got pregnant. I even believed in our happy family for a while. But when Jasper showed up, I immediately came back to reality. Who is this Jasper? Caleb frowned. When I was very young, I met a man. He charmed me. Mature, serious, wealthy. What girl wouldn't fall for that? Of course, he was very respected in the city and hopelessly married, but that didn't bother me at all. Jacob, that's what his name was. He literally carried me in his arms. I understood that such happiness wasn't eternal, and everything could collapse at any moment. I decided to thoroughly milk him to secure my future. I sold all the gifts he gave me and invested the money in securities. I had a friend then, a very successful stockbroker. He eagerly agreed to help. Any free money went there too. And then, I got into university. Jacob paid for everything. He immediately realized that I was quick to catch on. In my senior year, I got a job at his firm. In the finance department, I did my internship there. Everything was going well. But then Jacob had a falling out with someone from the competition. They took him out. Luckily, he wasn't coming to me, but to his wife otherwise. There would have been such a scandal. After his death, I met Jasper. He was one of the investors Jacob worked with. I perfectly understood that this man was connected to crime, but back then, it even seemed romantic to me. Jasper was old enough to be my grandfather, but he courted me beautifully and, unlike Jacob, wasn't married. He had a whole bunch of mistresses and illegitimate children, but he never officially married. He said, there used to be times when it was dangerous to start a family, but times have changed. And my old man was drawn to romance. He really wanted children born in wedlock from a beloved woman. For some reason, he saw that woman in me. I wasn't particularly against it. He was even likable to me. Smart, educated, charming. Old, of course. I was only 23 then, and he was already 60. But he spoke very convincingly, and I gave in. And then I didn't even notice how I got drawn into his business. The firm where I worked before was engaged in not the most legal activities. As an accountant, I had to meticulously clean everything up so that no one in the world could find fault. Jasper knew about this. He wasn't at all bothered to offer me a similar job, but for him. He said I had a real talent that would be a sin to bury. I didn't have time to figure out what was behind all these deals, and the deals were so bloody. But I was literally obsessed with numbers and wasn't particularly interested in anything else. And then they came to me. Jasper was away then. I was in the office all alone. It was late evening and there was a knock on the door. Then a young man I didn't know came in. "Hello, Julia," he smiled pleasantly. "I'm here for you." "Excuse me," Julia blushed, "but the workday is over. I'm about to head home." "Let's schedule another time. By the way, what is your question?" "Oh, I'm sorry," the guy got flustered. "How could I not introduce myself?" He pulled out some ID from his pocket and unfolded it in front of Julia's nose. "Langley Michael, detective." "Oh," she said. "Well, oh indeed, Julia." The visitor suddenly switched to a familiar tone. "What happened?" the girl asked in a trembling voice. "Julia, let's not play games. You know perfectly well what happened. Or rather, what's been going on here for the past few years. As far as I know, you're responsible for cooking the books. What makes you think that?" Julia suddenly became bold. "Yes, I'm the financial director. But what book cooking are you talking about? Do you even know where you are? We have a serious company here. You're overstepping. Do you really think you can come here, wave your ID in my face, and that's it? Scare me? I have nothing to fear. If you have questions, feel free to go to our legal department. As I said, please leave the premises or I'll call security." "Ah, so brave," the detective admired. "Well, let's see how you talk when official charges are brought. I wanted to resolve everything peacefully." He leaned closer and with a slight smirk added, "Goodbye, Julia. It's a shame to have disturbed you." After he left, Julia started shaking. Her nerves were on edge. She found a bottle of expensive cognac in her husband's office and with trembling fingers dialed Jasper's number. "My girl," a hoarse voice answered. "I hope you're calling for something important. I asked not to be disturbed." "Jasper," Julia's voice trembled. "Jasper. A man came to see me just now. Tried to scare me, but I sent him packing." "What man?" Jasper's voice grew cautious. "He flashed his ID at me, threatened." Julia sobbed into the phone. "But I drove him away. Told him if he had questions, he should go to our lawyers." "Good girl," Jasper praised her. "You did everything right. Now, go home and call Solomon. Explain everything as it is and don't worry about it anymore." "Okay," Julia sniffled. Solomon Fletcher helped, but his methods were unconventional. From the news, Julia learned that the body of that detective had been found in one of the canals. The government services didn't bother them anymore. Apparently, Solomon Fletcher managed to negotiate, and the officer's body was a kind of apology to Jasper Lockwood. Only then did she realize who she had tied her fate with. Of course, she had suspected before that her husband's conscience was not clean, but she had never dealt with corpses. Understanding what she had gotten herself into and that one day a less friendly major would come, she decided to run away. But that was problematic. Julia understood perfectly well that her husband would find her no matter where she hid. The only way to hide was a complete change of identity. "Well, you know the rest." Julia pressed her lips together. Julia hid quite successfully, but Jasper found her. He claimed she just needed to come back, that he had forgiven everything. But Julia intuitively felt he was lying. She knew how he dealt with traitors. She did some research. She didn't want to share their fate. And then he took Anastasia. Julia shuddered nervously. "I lost my mind. I don't even know how I came up with that plan. But it was the only chance to survive. I behaved like the ultimate selfish person. At that time, I didn't care about you or the kids. I just wanted to live, even if it meant dying. Organizing the illness wasn't difficult. I didn't even have to pay much for the whole act. I played my part well, worked on my appearance to make it look realistic, but it was worth it. And the funeral was just a circus. They injected me with a special paralytic to prevent me from accidentally giving myself away in the coffin. And thank God. Otherwise, I would have just laughed in Jasper's face when he leaned in to kiss me. I remember his perfume very well. Despite his status, my husband turned out to be decent and brought Anastasia to my mom right after the funeral. I knew they'd be watching my mom. I hired a woman who took the child from her. There was a whole play there too. Meanwhile, my mum continued to walk with the stroller, pretending to take walks, so as not to arouse suspicion. My mum took the child to an orphanage. That's where the story ended. Another city, new documents again. I managed to hide my identity for 4 years, and then Jasper found me again. Don't ask how. I don't know myself. Apparently he felt he had been cruelly deceived. But this time he didn't come himself. They just grabbed me in the park while I was walking with my daughter. I woke up in his old house. Jasper was sitting in a chair, laughing. He even clapped his hands, can you imagine? Wait, Caleb interrupted. Your mum said you returned here when you found out Jasper was dead. And also, you became his heir. That's right, Julia nodded. Jasper is dead. I killed him myself. That foolish old man completely lost his mind. He wasn't going to punish me right away. He even said, I'll do it when you least expect it. In fear, he decided to keep me close so I'd go insane from paranoia. I didn't want that at all. The funniest thing is that to everyone around, we were a happy couple reunited after a long quarrel. He should have gotten rid of me right away, not waited for me to inject poison into his IV. It wasn't even poison, just his heart medication. I just increased the dose. There was nothing to find fault with. A heart attack. By the way, how's the coffee? Want a refill? No, thank you, Caleb replied, noticing a strange gleam in Julia's eyes. All right, she smiled. I think you've had enough. She squinted. Don't you think I just told you all this for nothing? What do you mean? The man looked at her in confusion. You're so naive, Caleb. I can't. You were always like this. It's what doomed you. You just drank the same drug I gave Jasper. In a little while, you'll die too. Sorry. Nothing personal. But I need Dorian. You won't give him to me willingly. The only way to get my son is to get rid of you. Besides, you signed your own death warrant. Caleb sat as if struck by lightning. He didn't feel any physical changes. You're lying, he said calmly to Julia. No, she shook her head. No matter how you try to convince me otherwise, sooner or later you'll turn me in. You know about my crimes. I don't know why you insisted on this meeting, but you determined your fate. No one knows you're here. In a few minutes you'll feel a sharp pain in your chest. If you don't get medical help quickly, you'll just die. I won't even have to get rid of the body. No one will come here, and I'll just take your keys, wait until Dorian is home alone and take him. That's how simple it is. Julia didn't have time to finish. She only felt something heavy descend on her head. Caleb barely remembered what happened next. He saw only Jane's worried face, who was slapping his cheeks. A sharp pain pierced his chest, so strong that the man couldn't even breathe. From somewhere far away, he heard his father's strict but calm voice and Julia's screams. Then it went dark. Caleb came to in a hospital ward. Something was beeping nearby. It was dark, only occasionally illuminated by the headlights of passing cars, and the light from the devices gave some idea of where the man was. This is a dream, he thought, trying to remember what happened. Or am I dead? Julia said something about a heart attack, and the light. Some kind of otherworldly. What's that beeping? Caleb tried to turn his head, but his muscles were stiff. He groaned slightly. The room light turned on, and a woman quickly approached him, judging by her clothes, a nurse. But Caleb wasn't sure. Everything was jumbled in his head. The woman pressed a button at the head of the bed. A couple of minutes later, a man in a white coat entered the ward. He looked intently at Caleb, then at the devices, and only then spoke. Caleb, can you hear me? Caleb tried to answer, but his mouth was so dry his tongue wouldn't move. Nodding didn't work either, so he just blinked twice. Very good, the doctor said. Now Caleb was sure he was a doctor. Mackenzie, give the patient some water. The nurse brought a glass with a straw to his lips. Caleb drank so greedily that the container quickly emptied. She immediately refilled it. Only when the thirst retreated could he speak. Where am I? You're in the hospital. Don't worry, everything is fine now. You were brought in just in time, thank God. The ambulance crew was nearby when it happened. What happened? I don't remember anything. Everything's hazy. I remember sitting in the kitchen, drinking coffee. And Julia. Where is she? The doctor frowned. I don't know any Julia. You were brought in with a suspected heart attack. And in the corridor right now are 2 people, a certain Jane and your father. I think they can visit you if you're not against it. No, let them in. All right, I'll leave you now. I'll check in later. I advise you not to worry. Okay, Caleb agreed. The doctor left the ward with the nurse. Almost immediately, Jane rushed into the room. She literally threw herself at Caleb and began to kiss his cheeks. Tears streamed down her face. Jane, Kevin said sternly, what are you doing? The doctor said not to disturb him. Oh, the girl froze. Caleb, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. It's just... I'm so glad you're okay. What happened? Caleb asked quietly. You don't remember anything? That witch was going to send you to the other side. She spiked your coffee with a horse dose of some heart medication. You had a heart attack. I called the ambulance right away when Kevin hit her over the head and tied her up. If we had delayed even a little, it could have ended very badly. But why didn't you listen to me? I told you not to mess with her. And Julia? Where is she? Where she belongs, Kevin said sternly. In the detention center. He sighed heavily. Did you even think, son? Why didn't you tell me anything? At least you had the sense to tell Jane. If not for her, we'd be mourning your cold corpse right now. Yes, but how did you end up at the house? Caleb frowned. I didn't say where I was going. I didn't even know myself. Kevin smirked. Again, thank your lady love. I've never seen such quick actions. She sensed it would end badly. Yes, Jane nodded. As soon as you left, I told Kevin to get ready and arrange with a neighbour to watch over Dorian. She's a good grandma, don't worry. She didn't even ask questions. I told your father to watch out the window to see where you were heading. Thank God Julia didn't arrive right away. Otherwise, we wouldn't have been able to follow you. We quickly went down. At that moment, the car you got into was already leaving the yard. I drove like crazy just to keep you in sight. Kevin shook his head. Your girl is a real racer. I just held on to the seat and prayed we wouldn't skid on the turn. I didn't know I could drive like that, Jane blushed. Thank God we didn't crash. But I felt you were in danger. When I realized that Witch was taking you out of town, something fluttered in my chest. There were hardly any cars around. I prayed she wouldn't notice us. We were lucky the summer settlement was empty and I easily found where she parked the car. And then it was just a matter of sneaking into the house unnoticed, Kevin smirked. It's even strange she didn't lock the back door. Oh, when I think how it could have ended, I feel sick, Jane shuddered. We were lucky with the ambulance. They were on call in the neighbouring settlement. I went with them right away, and Kevin stayed to wait for the police. Now it's all over, son, his father said softly, stroking Caleb's head. We'll go for now. Everyone needs to rest. Jane hasn't slept for 2 days, and Dorian is probably going crazy there. Caleb was discharged a week later. Almost immediately, he was summoned to the station to testify against his wife. Julia was charged with numerous crimes. She faced a significant sentence. The woman remained silent. She hired a very expensive lawyer. Of all the charges, a few could be proven without scientific expertise. Julia didn't say a word and didn't even look at Caleb. As he was about to leave with the investigator, she suddenly said, Caleb, please take care of Anastasia. Caleb nodded grimly. He wasn't going to abandon the girl. After all, she was his daughter. But he couldn't wrap his head around how to explain to her where her mother had gone. Lillian met him all in tears. She had testified against her daughter. I couldn't do otherwise. Julia got carried away. I can forgive her anything, but not this. The woman sighed heavily. Maybe it's my fault she turned out this way. I let her go from home too early, didn't control her. But how do you hold her back? As a mother, it's very painful for me to know she had to suffer. But as a person, I understand. I raised a monster that made others suffer. I have no forgiveness. Don't blame yourself, Lillian, Caleb replied. Call me Scarlett. The woman sat down on a chair. I haven't heard my real name in so long that I almost believed all the past was just a dark fiction. She smiled bitterly. I probably FaceTime too. I talked to the lawyer. He said there's nothing to worry about. The worst you face is a suspended sentence for concealing a crime. If it's proven you acted under pressure, there's nothing to fear, especially since you're cooperating with the investigation. Julia remains silent, although there is enough evidence against her. I'm ready to serve time, the woman blurted out. I feel guilty. Stop it, Scarlett, Caleb reassured her, patting her hand. There's no need for that, and at your age, prison is no place. Think about the grandchildren instead. And how are you now? I'm doing well, Caleb smiled. Jane and I have already set the wedding date. If not for her, I don't know where I'd be now. I'm glad you found a worthy woman. I'm sorry, Caleb, for how I treated you. When it comes to feelings, I'm incapable of thinking with my head. How I wish I could go back. To the time when Julia was still little. I would do everything differently. It's not worth regretting anything. We must answer for our actions, no matter what consequences they bring. Caleb stepped outside. Snow was falling. Large white flakes evenly covered everything around with a thin veil. The man got into the car and drove home. They were already waiting for him. Dorian and Anastasia were playing in the living room. The girl hadn't yet settled into the new environment. She often cried, constantly asking where her mom was. But Jane, in some inexplicable way, distracted the little one from sad thoughts, constantly finding interesting activities for the children. Watching them, Caleb caught himself thinking he had been so wrong about Jane before. He thought she wasn't fond of children. How wrong he was. Jane radiated such warmth that anyone around her would feel safe. Caleb realized he had been so focused on his problems that he mistook the desired for reality. And Jane, due to her natural tact, didn't try to convince him otherwise. "Dad," Dorian exclaimed joyfully, "we're learning to write." "Really?" "It's about time. Less than a year left before school, it's better to be prepared. Look, Jane bought us copybooks. She's teaching us to write letters. I'm not doing very well, but Anastasia is great." The son handed him a couple of notebooks filled with crooked letters. "You're definitely making progress," the man noted. "How about we go have some tea?" I bought a cake. "Hooray! Cake!" the children shouted in unison and dashed to the kitchen. Jane lingered. "So?" she asked quietly. "How is she holding up?" "She says she's ready to go to jail." "Nonsense," the girl exclaimed. "She's guilty of something, yes? She forced her daughter to live under false names. But she didn't even know about the crimes and helped the investigation. She can't go to jail. And the lawyer says she's unlikely to get a real sentence." "I'm thinking," Jane frowned, "she needs to see her grandchildren as often as possible now. Imagine, suffering for so many years, hiding, living with that burden. And children will quickly bring her back to order, especially two at once." "You're probably right, but I won't force her." "Don't force her, just offer. You can take them to her more often, or I can." Jane pondered. "Let's send Kevin to her. I think they'll easily find common ground." "Oh," Caleb suddenly frowned. "Their relationship is very complicated. I always thought your dad wanted to court her, but she was like an iceberg, unapproachable. So much so that they even developed some kind of mutual hatred." "Everything is fixable, dear," Jane smiled slyly. "And anyway, don't you think you make mistakes too often?" "What are you getting at?" "I can offer to do a compatibility reading for them. You know now that the cards don't lie and don't make mistakes." Caleb rolled his eyes. "Oh, those cards of yours. All right, who knows, give it a try, and I'll invite her over. Maybe we can agree on tomorrow. Dad was planning to come." "Good idea. I feel another tea party coming on, but I shouldn't indulge in cakes. I might not fit into the wedding dress." "Then don't eat," Caleb laughed. Jane flicked his nose playfully, laughing. "Where have you seen a woman in her right mind refuse cake?"